aliens, gods, and flying machines in the Vedic Hindu scriptures. The ancient scriptures of India are absolutely saturated with all kinds of flying craft called Vimanas. There's even a work based on more ancient scriptures called the Vimanika Sastra, or the Book of Aeronautical Science. And there's a fair amount of books on the subject that you can find online anytime you want. Now let's delve in deeper. The Vimanika Sastra deals with descriptions of flying craft giving information on steering, long flights, protections from storms and lightning. It also refers to switching from anti-gravity to solar energy. It describes different shapes and sizes even, one-man vehicles for local flights in Earth's atmosphere, craft for local flights in space, and larger ones for longer flights. Now, in the Samaranga Sutta, which is an 11th century work based on a much older text, it includes 230 verses on the use and design of Vimanas, or flying machines. Inside the circular airframe, place the Mercury engine with a solar boiler at the aircraft centre. By means of the power in the heated Mercury which sets the driving whirlwind in motion, the Vimana can travel a great distance in a marvellous manner. Now, David Childress, the author of Technology of the Gods, writes, "Mercury is metal. It's also a liquid and is a conductor of electricity. You can put it into a closed gyroscopic device with Mercury spinning around and you get electrified." Studies have been done on this by NASA and by other scientists, and they find you get levitation effects. Indeed, there's been a lot of modern experiments with magnetic levitation, but this science was actually known long ago in ancient India. Let's look at some earlier 20th century artists' impressions of different types of Kritika Vimanas. They're crude, of course, but they're based on the last section of the Vimanika Sastra. For example, the Sukuna Viman, Rukba Viman, Sundara, and the Tripura Viman. From Technology of the Gods again, we read, the Vimanika Sastra talks about electricity and power sources. It talks about the pilots and the clothing they had to wear. It even talks about the food that they eat. So who are the pilots of these things? Well, let's look at different possibilities. 1. Humanoid beings from other parts of the universe, and or from realms directly accessible from specific mountains on the Earth, beneath the Earth's surface, and from gateways within the inner solar system. Our own superior distant ancestors who are no longer on the surface of the Earth, and or humanoids indirectly related to us who have never lived on Earth. This is understandable and digestible because in the Vedas there's 4.32 million year cycles called Yuga cycles, Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga and Kali Yuga, lasting almost an unimaginable long period of time. We are just at the beginning stages of the Kali Yuga. Imagine if you have Earth's human history going back so far. There's so many advanced civilizations that have come and gone like waves in the ocean, practically beyond our imagination and understanding. In chapter 19 of the Vimanika Sastra, there's different kinds of flying machines associated with the different yugas. For example, in the Satya Yuga, humanoids could fly on their own with mystic cities. In the Treta Yuga, flying machines were mantrika, or powered by mantras, 25 types mentioned. In the Dwapara Yuga, the Tantrika type, through ritual and yantras, 56 types. In the Kali Yuga, Kritika, or gross, mechanical types of flying machines, of which 25 are mentioned. So of course, remember, we're dealing here with the much longer aspects of Earth's history, not just the Earth but beyond. Now in the Ramayana, for example, it's set in the Treta Yuga. It features a Pushpak Viman. The ancient city of Ayodhya, once it was dark at night and Lord Ram returned home on such Pushpak Viman, and the whole city was lit up to greet them. The day after, Lord Ram became king. The Ramayana explains that Bhutaganas controlled Ravana's flying machines in war. One such verse reads, "These wonderful Vimanas roam the sky with extremely high speed, controlled by thousands of evil creatures with big round eyes and protective clothes on their body." Also, Vimanas are mentioned in Mahabharata, Rigveda, Yajurveda, Atharvaveda, Maya Matam, which is attributed to the architect Maya, plus other classic texts like the Satapatya Brahmana, Markandeya Purana, Vishnu Purana, Harivamsa, Uttaramacharita, Hasacharita, and the Tamil text as well. But now let's concentrate here on the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Purana, translation and commentary by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Canto 10 we read, "From his excellent airship Sarva threw down a torrent of weapons. Thus terribly tormented by the airship, Lord Krishna's city had no peace, just like the earth when it was attacked by the three aerial cities of the demons. From one moment to the next, the sober ship appeared on the earth, in the sky, on a mountain peak, or in the water, like a whirling, flaming baton. It never remained in any one place." Canto 3 of the Bhagavatam. Seeking to please his beloved wife, the sage Gadama exercised his yogic power and instantly produced an aerial mansion that he could travel at his will. The aerial mansion shone as charmingly as the moon in the midst of the stars in the sky. We can only begin to imagine what it was like. Canto 2. This refers to a Buddha incarnation of a former Kali Yuga at least 4 million years ago. When the atheists, after being well versed in the Vedic scientific knowledge, annihilate inhabitants of different planets, flying unseen in the sky on well-built rockets, the Lord will bewilder their minds as Buddha and will preach on sub-religious principles. Maharaj Priyavata described in Canto 5 of the Bhagavatam, he was given the responsibility for maintaining and protecting all the planetary systems. His effulgent flying chariot flew through space for 7 months at various distances, making a second sun from the point of view of the Earth. There were also accounts of ancient battles between demigods and demons to control the universe. Now let's look at the nature and agendas of the divine and demoniac races in the Vedic universe. This, of course, here this picture is representing the demigods. They follow dharma, religious activity, belief in the worship and promotion of the worship of God, respect celibacy but also family values, often vegetarian, and promote peace. They accept diversity and aspect to help humankind. They love nature and have respect for the sages and holy people. Many of them can travel mystically, and the objective of life is to escape from the cycle of samsara, the cycle of birth and death. Now, the more demoniac species in the universe, let's look at their agendas. They follow adharma. They seek power and control for oneself. Their lust is uncontrollable. They would support anything, technology or otherwise, that is against family tradition. They eat lots of meat, often at war with each other. And, they prefer similarity and conformity, and enslave and reduce the power of humanity. They dislike nature and prefer technology, and certainly disrespect the sages. They travel around for the use of technology, and they remain forever in the cycle of birth and death. But of course, whichever kind of alien beings associate with ourselves, with our minds and our heart, and also even physically manifest on the earth, that would depend on what we attract. The earth is kind of in the middle of these different types of planetary systems, and it's almost like a magnet. We get what we deserve karmically. Consciousness and conditions on the earth attract the appropriate alien beings, in other words. The subterranean realms. Now, of course, this listed in the Puranic scriptures. We have Bharat, of course, well known to be roughly in the Greater India area, but also different talas associated with the surface of the earth in different places. However, they're also associated with different planets, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, and so forth. So how can that be both? Well, let's use an example. Rasatal means lower region and abyss, so it's certainly a reference to an underground realm. However, the Vedic Sanskrit language is often ambiguous and can mean two things depending on the context or more. For example, such underground realms can be accessible via a specific region on the earth that can access itself a lower planet. Let's look at Atala, a place certainly of sensory enjoyment there. Vitala, place of gold and palaces and other such opulence. Sutala, the residence of Bali Maharaj. Talatala, a realm of Mayadanava, the architect of the Asuras, the demoniac beings. And there's Mahatala, a place of great dragon-like snakes. Wouldn't want to go there. Rasatala, enemies of the demigods, places of darkness, and Patala, Naga realms, for example, the capital of which is Bhagavata city. Now, unpleasant looking beings to us are almost certainly from the lower planets. And what about abductions we hear so much about, whether it's humans or cattle? Well, abductions, genetic experiments and the abuse of cows are performed by beings with a very low spiritual ranking in the universe. They are more likely to visit the earth in the Kali Yuga, of course, with an agenda based on the spiritual degradation of the soul. And underneath Patala is the Naraka Lokas, the hellish worlds. Basically, Yamaloka people get judged, of course, and if it's their karma to spend some time in these hellish planets, then so be it. I wouldn't recommend it, but they get dragged there by the Yamadutas. And, of course, they'll stay there for as long as it takes to burn off their bad karma with various appropriate and sometimes ironic punishments. Now the body elements of the humanoid beings across the universe. There's various elements in the universe: earth, fire, water, ether, and air. And of course there's subtler ones as well, like mind, false ego, and intelligence. So different bodies are made of different combinations of these elements, for example, and they are no less real than the world we perceive around us if they're made of simply subtle elements. For example, this is Earth. These are the human beings we know today. Our bodies are made mainly of water, but also, of course, earth, fire, air, and ether. The demigods, like the sun god, of course, his body much more greater amount of intelligence and mind and fire. And because of the existence of the soul, it's perfectly possible to live anywhere in the universe, on any planet. Ghosts or bhutas and lower beings like that, of course you've got mind, false ego and ether. And more demoniac beings in the universe, again, you've got more water, earth, and of course you've also got false ego and the mind. That's what their bodies are made of. But Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, the topmost position in the universe actually, his body is made of pure intelligence, not gross matter that we can perceive. Life within the vertical dimension of the Puranic universe. The vertical distances given have little to do with physical or linear distance that we experience. Rather, it's a hierarchy of consciousness, not unlike the human chakras. Now, this is Bhugola, of course, which means the Earth globe, and it's surrounded by ghosts and yakshasas, maybe a couple of 100 miles out and more. But let's move further away from the Earth. We got Meru there and various mountain ranges, and we look at the greater Bhuloka region, the greater region of the Earth here. We find the Vichadaras and the Siddhas, mystic beings. Beyond that, beyond us by the top of Mount Meru, we get to Bhuvaloka, which is the realms of the upper devas, which are not demigods, not humans, but somewhere in between. We go up and explore the stars, the nearby stars, and we get to the top, in the same direction as the pole star, we get Dhruvaloka. Between us and Dhruvaloka, there's human beings superior to us, and Gandharvas, heavenly musicians. Some planets up to Dhruvaloka have various types of oceans, like ghee, sugarcane juice, sweet water, milk and curd, liquor, and salt water. Not saying they're literally ghee and sugarcane juice, but these are the nearest equivalents we have on the Earth. We look at the inner solar system, like Venus, Mars, and Mercury, Pushkaradweep, Sakadweep, and Kronchadweep. There's some kind of connection that we don't understand between these planets and these other heavenly realms. For example, Kronchadweep has a huge mountain called Kroncha. Residents worship deities of Varuna in the form of iron and stone. Vegetation there was destroyed, however, by Kartikeya. This is associated with Mars, of course, the bringing of war. Looking back here again at the side view here of almost like a table of the universe. We go up beyond Dhruvaloka, Svargaloka, of course, which is the king of heaven, is said to reside there, Indra. Beyond that, Mahaloka, Janaloka, and higher still, Tapaloka. Of course, their way of living, experience of life is far beyond what we can imagine. Mahaloka, again, a place where there's great sages and great wonderful opulences there. Janaloka, the place, of course, where people perform austerities, get their reward in their next life. Their beauty on these heavenly planets is beyond imagination. Tapaloka, very conducive for meditation. And right at the top of the universe there, by the top above Janaloka, is Satyaloka, the abode of Lord Brahma, as we mentioned earlier. you can imagine the beauty of that planet. Well, thank you very much indeed. Hope you enjoyed the tour there of the Vedic universe. Thanks for listening and keep in touch.